The alien council, confident in their strategic superiority, dismisses humanity as a mere annoyance. They laugh at Earth's defenses and move forward with their plans. But as their invasion unfolds, they quickly realize their fatal underestimation of humankind. And that was before Earth even responded. The council chamber was dimly lit, filled with the hum of alien machinery and the sharp scent of recycled air. It was the usual place of power, a sterile, calculated room where the galaxy's elite met to make decisions that would alter the course of civilizations. But today, the tone was different. Today, the chatter was all about Earth. I still can't believe they've made it this far. The words came from Cyros, a high-ranking member of the council, his voice dripping with contempt. 1,000-year-old species, and they still haven't mastered the basic principles of interstellar defense. Low threat, as we all know. His fellow council members nodded, some rolling their eyes, others clicking their mandibles in disapproval of the notion that such an ancient civilization could be anything more than a speed bump on their empire's path. Indeed, agreed Ethelian, a towering figure who had just been promoted to the advisory role. Their weapons are archaic, and their technology is nothing to fear. They won't even see us coming. The room filled with laughter, a strange, echoing sound that reverberated off the cold metal walls. They had underestimated Earth, not just its technology, but its people. It was clear. They thought they were gods invincible, all-powerful. Humanity to them was a plaything, nothing more than a nuisance. I think it's time we end this. A simple strike on their most vulnerable point, and we can go home before the next galactic cycle. Zarak, a battle strategist, stood up, his glowing eyes fixed on the projection screen displaying Earth's star maps. The humans are not even aware of the weapons we've deployed around their system. We'll sweep in, and it'll be over before their leaders even know. The council continued to laugh, dismissing the idea of Earth's ability to even raise a proper defense. They had misjudged their opponent before. Now they were just enjoying the spectacle of it all. But as Cyros turned to leave, he paused, his multifaceted eyes narrowing in sudden curiosity. "What was that?" he muttered to himself. The screen before him flickered for a brief second, a single unregistered ship crossing the outer limits of the solar system. It was small, unremarkable in shape, but something about it seemed off. He shrugged, turning back to the conversation. "It's just a glitch," he muttered. "Nothing to worry about." On the surface of the moon, the human military sat in silence. No one dared speak. Commander Alara stood before the holographic display of Earth's tactical map, her brow furrowed. The briefing had ended, but there was still a sense of unease among her team. "Are we ready for this?" Lieutenant Harper asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're not just ready," Alara responded, her voice cold. "We're prepared. They think we don't have the firepower, the tech, or the tactics, but they're wrong. We have something they could never predict." Harper glanced at her, then back at the screen. "You're sure about this?" Alara turned, her face expressionless. "We've been underestimated for the last time. If they think this is just a fight for survival, they're wrong. It's a fight for our future." Her hand hovered over the red button. A soft click echoed in the room, then silence. The countdown began. A subtle vibration echoed through the alien ship. It was small at first, then grew. Cyros looked up, his eyes widening in disbelief as the projection screen came alive with data. "What's happening?" A single flash of light pierced through the dark vastness of space, moving faster than any alien ship could. It was an unexpected surge of power, something beyond anything the Council had ever seen. Then another, and another. The ships they thought were just their own turned against them. The council members stared, their laughter silenced. replaced with a palpable fear that crept into their bones. The unknown had arrived. Cyros trembled, his earlier arrogance now evaporating into raw panic. What is this? The humans, Ithilien whispered, his voice betraying shock. They've retaliated. This is not how it was supposed to go. They had no time to react. The first wave of human retaliation swept through their fleet like a blade through paper, tearing apart ships with brutal simplicity. They had underestimated the humans, not just their technology, but their capacity for pure, unrelenting vengeance. What they had mistaken for mercy was a declaration of war. And now the galaxy would bear witness to the consequences. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The alien fleet hung in the vacuum of space, eerily quiet. No stars gleamed nearby, just the black expanse, endless and consuming. It was a strange silence, one that seemed to stretch on forever. In the heart of the command ship, Cyros paced nervously. The earlier arrogance had drained from his body, leaving only the fear that had begun to creep into his thoughts. They had failed. They had miscalculated. And now their fate was sealed. A quiet beep echoed through the command center, the only sound breaking the unnatural stillness. Zarek, the strategist, stood frozen by the main console. His multi-lensed eyes scanned the data that flickered across the screens before him. His voice, when it came, was hoarse, his confidence shattered. It's them. The humans. They've adapted faster than we ever expected. Zarek's words were heavy, as though he struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. There. TECH, it's brutal. Primitive, but brutally effective. Cyros stopped pacing. The others had gathered in a circle around the central holographic table, staring at the projections of Earth's solar system. There were no more smug smiles, no more dismissive gestures. Only stunned silence as they watched, helpless as Earth unleashed its fury. They didn't respond as we expected, Ithilien muttered. They weren't supposed to fight back like this. It wasn't supposed to be this organized, this strategic. Strategic? Cyros snapped, his voice sharp. This isn't strategy, it's madness. They should have been obliterated by our fleet already. How did they even know to counter us? The answer was simple, but it left a cold, sinking feeling in the pit of Cyrus's stomach. Humanity had been underestimated. They had been deemed primitive, barely worthy of attention in the grand scheme of things, a species without a place in the galaxy. But now the tides had shifted. The humans had rallied, and what the Council thought was a minor annoyance had grown into an unstoppable force. I want to know how this happened, Cyros demanded, his fists clenched. I want answers now. The technician at the far corner of the room, a jittery alien with countless tendrils for arms, scrambled to relay the data. The holographic projection shifted, now displaying Earth's response in real time, a series of shock waves that emanated from their home planet, wiping out entire sectors of the alien fleet. They've launched M-pulses, the technician stammered, far beyond what we anticipated. They've also deployed explosive devices coordinated with their orbital platforms. It's like they've had these weapons waiting for us. Waiting for us? Zarek's voice cracked, disbelief evident in every syllable. No, that's impossible. We have intel. They weren't prepared. They couldn't have been. They were, the technician interrupted, his tone growing increasingly frantic. I don't know how, but they've been holding these weapons in reserve, and the way they're using them, it's as if they've been expecting this all along. Cyros felt a cold sweat bead on his brow. This wasn't just a counterattack. It was a message. Humanity wasn't playing by any known rules. They had turned their weakness into a weapon. They were no longer the prey. They were the predators. And now the Council, who had once dismissed Earth as a footnote, was the one in danger of being erased. What do we do? Ithelion's voice was strained, as though he couldn't bring himself to believe what was happening. The Empire's fleet, mighty and invincible, was being torn apart by something as insignificant as humans. The realization hit hard, deep into the bones. We respond, Cyros said, forcing himself to focus. We take the fight back to them. We bring in the fleet's full power. We crush them, now. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't that simple. The humans had forced a shift in the balance of power. Their response had been swift and decisive. They weren't the weaklings the Council had presumed. They were warriors, driven by a fierce, almost animalistic instinct to survive. And now, the alien fleet was caught in the crossfire of humanity's wrath. The silence returned as the alien officers tried to process the unfolding chaos. Their entire strategy, their calculations, their superiority all had been shattered by the unexpected retaliation of a species they had once seen as nothing more than ants beneath their feet. Cyros clenched his jaw, his thoughts racing. His mind reached back to the Council's original assessments of Earth: weak, unorganized, far too divided to pose a real threat. They had all laughed at the idea of humanity putting up any significant resistance. And now the consequence of that arrogance was beginning to take shape. They had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt, to fight, to plan. This wasn't supposed to happen. Zarek muttered under his breath. This wasn't supposed to happen. Cyros snapped his gaze to the strategist. Don't tell me what wasn't supposed to happen, Zarek. Tell me how we're going to survive this. Zarek opened his mouth to speak, but hesitated. He looked to the screens, which now displayed a flurry of red alerts and flashing icons indicating that the majority of the alien fleet's advanced weapons had been disabled or outright destroyed. They're isolating us. The technician whispered. They're cutting us off from the central command. Their attack protocols are locking us out of every system we control. A chill ran down Cyrus's spine. Locking us out? How? From within their own ships, the technician explained. They've gained access to our systems. Their drones, their satellites, they've infiltrated everything. Cyros felt the weight of those words. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were taking control of the battlefield. They were turning their weapons and technology against the invaders. Their primitive technology wasn't so primitive after all. We need to retreat, Ithelion suggested, the fear in his voice rising. No, Cyros snapped. We fight. We fight until the last ship is gone. We can't show weakness. Not now. Not when they've already seen what we can do. But deep down, Cyros knew that the war had already been lost. The humans had taken the initiative. They had redefined the rules of engagement, and in doing so, they had turned the tables, proving that they were anything but the weak, primitive species the Council had assumed them to be. They had been wrong, and now it was too late to change the course of fate. The alien fleet, once a symbol of invincibility, was now a collection of broken ships, drifting aimlessly through the void. Cyros stood at the command center, staring at the shattered holographic display, his mind struggling to process what had just unfolded. It had been a massacre. The humans, with their primitive technology, had outsmarted the Council at every turn. We've lost control, Zarek said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a cold, hard truth. Our fleet is scattered. Communications are down across the board. It's chaos. Cyros didn't respond immediately. His eyes were locked on the screen, watching as the last few alien ships tried to regroup, only to be torn apart by waves of human firepower. The humans had been underestimated in the worst possible way, and now they were showing the council what real power looked like. The more he watched, the clearer it became. This wasn't a battle of technology anymore. It was a battle of will. And the humans had the edge. "Shut it down," Cyros finally said, his voice cold and devoid of the arrogance it once held. "There's no use in fighting anymore. We're not going to win this. Not now, not ever." "But," Zarek began, only to be interrupted by Cyros' sharp glare. "No," Cyros said, his tone final. "They've proven themselves. This is not how it was supposed to go. Not even close." The room fell silent as the truth of Cyros's words sank in. The alien council, which had been so sure of their superiority, was now in disarray. The humans, against all odds, had turned the tide. They had fought not just for survival, but for something deeper, their place in the galaxy. And that determination was something the council had never seen coming. The screens flickered, showing more data streams from Earth's defense systems. The humans weren't retreating. They were advancing. One after another, alien ships were torn apart by human weapons they had thought were mere toys, archaic, clumsy things that shouldn't have worked at all. But they did. How did they even know? Ithalian asked, shaking his head. How did they predict our every move? Their response was ... precise. They've been waiting for this. They've known all along. Cyros ran a hand through his hair.
Frustration building within him. I don't know
how they did it, but they did. And now we're paying for it. The technician, still trembling in his corner of the room, spoke up. "Sir, we've just received an emergency transmission from the Human Command Center. They're requesting a meeting." "A meeting?" Cyros repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "What do they want from us? They've decimated our fleet and now they want to talk?" "They've made us an offer," the technician continued, his hands shaking as he displayed the message on the main screen. "They've said they can end the conflict, but only if we agree to certain conditions." Cyros's eyes narrowed. "Conditions? What do they want?" The technician hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "They want ... our surrender, full and unconditional." The silence in the room was suffocating. Zarek, Ithalian, and the others exchanged nervous glances. The idea of surrender, of capitulating to the humans, was unthinkable. But the reality was undeniable. They had been utterly defeated. Cyros let out a long breath. "Prepare the fleet for retreat," he ordered. "We're not going to make a deal with them. Not yet. Not until we understand exactly what they're offering." He turned away from the screen and began pacing again. The fear was setting in now. The humans weren't just survivors. They were conquerors. And the Council's empire, built on centuries of dominance, was crumbling beneath their feet. "What if we don't have a choice?" Ithalian spoke up, his voice barely a whisper. "What if we don't have the strength to fight back anymore? What if surrender is the only option left?" Cyros paused, the weight of those words hitting him like a physical blow. He couldn't bring himself to admit it, but he knew the truth. They had been defeated. The humans had proven themselves stronger, more resourceful, more determined than anything they had ever encountered. And now they were the ones who had the power to decide the fate of the Council's empire. "Get the diplomats ready," Cyros said, his voice low and resigned. "We'll send a response. But we're not surrendering just yet. We need to understand what they want, what they expect from us. If they're offering peace, we need to know what the cost is." As the technician began preparing the communication for the humans, Cyros turned to face the others. His heart felt heavy, weighed down by the reality of their situation. The Council had underestimated humanity, and now they would pay the price. for that mistake. But in the back of his mind, something else stirred a flicker of doubt. What if this wasn't the end? What if humanity's victory was just the beginning? The thought sent a shiver down Cyros's spine. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were shaping their future. And the council had no idea how far they would go to make sure they came out on top. Send the message, Cyros said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that gnawed at him. But don't expect mercy. In the silence that followed, the weight of their failure hung in the air. The council had been caught off guard, blindsided by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. But now, as the human ships continued to advance, one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were the ones in control, and the galaxy was about to change. The message was sent. But the council was already too late. It had been days since Cyros ordered the fleet's retreat, but no help had come. Earth had secured its place in the galaxy, not as an afterthought or a minor species to be ignored, but as a force to be reckoned with. The alien council's arrogance had cost them everything. Cyros watched the projections on the screen, the last remaining alien ships hanging in the darkness like wounded animals. The humans had not only defeated them, but they had also claimed their right to exist in the universe, to thrive. The council had underestimated the humans, and now they would learn what it meant to face a species that could and would fight. For their survival, the offer from humanity had come with an ultimatum: surrender or face total annihilation. They could no longer afford to fight back. Earth's forces had wiped out the majority of the Council's fleet, and the remaining ships had been disabled, stranded on the edge of their empire's reach. And now, as Cyros stood in the command room, it was time to face the consequences. The once mighty empire that had dominated the galaxy was crumbling, piece by piece. The realization hit like a hammer. "They've won," Zarek said, his voice hollow, drained of the venom it had once carried. "We were supposed to be the ones in control, but it was them, the humans. They've made us bow. They've turned the tables. What do we do now?" Cyros didn't answer immediately. He looked at the flickering lights on the command screen. The images of human forces advancing, their ships now in orbit around their most valuable systems, were a constant reminder of their victory. How had it come to this? How had they gone from underestimating humanity to finding themselves on the edge of extinction? But it wasn't just the defeat that weighed on Cyros. It was the understanding that Earth had only just begun. They were no longer the weaklings the Council had once believed them to be. No, they were now a power in the galaxy, and their influence would spread. Cyros knew this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something far greater. And so, the Council ship sat there in silence, helpless in the face of the inevitable. Earth's forces had made their message clear. Humanity was no longer just a species to be conquered. They had fought, bled, and survived. They were a force of nature. "Shut down the fleet," Cyros ordered quietly. "There's no use in continuing. The humans have taken control, and we are the ones who must adapt." The silence in the command room was deafening. The Council was no longer an empire. It was a relic of a past that had been swept away by the tide of human determination. They had miscalculated. They had laughed, mocked, and belittled humanity, thinking their conquest would be easy. And now, they would pay the price. But Cyros didn't let himself fall into despair. The fight wasn't over. It wasn't over for humanity, and it wasn't over for them. The galaxy was vast, and the balance of power had shifted. Now it was time for humanity to prove itself, to show what it was truly capable of. And if the Council had learned anything, it was that underestimating a species like Earth's was the worst mistake they could ever make. "What happens now?" Ethelian asked, the fear in his voice barely masked. "Do we accept the humans' terms? Do we negotiate for our survival?" Cyros turned, his expression hardening. We don't negotiate. We rebuild. The humans may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. We will not be forgotten. He paused, his eyes scanning the room. There was a new resolve in his voice, a strength that had been absent before. We will learn from this. We will adapt and we will strike back. Humanity may have proven themselves this time, but the galaxy is a place of constant change. And they will learn that there's always something more dangerous lurking just beyond their reach. With that, Cyros turned toward the exit. The war was over for now, but the struggle would continue. The Council had underestimated humanity, but they had underestimated themselves even more. They had been broken, but they would not stay down. Not for long. Outside the ship, the stars seemed colder now, their light flickering with the promise of change. The once proud empire had fallen, but the humans had gained something far greater than victory. They had gained respect, power, and a place in the galaxy they would never relinquish. And as the humans looked to the stars, they understood something fundamental. Earth wasn't just a planet anymore. It was a force. A force that, once provoked, would never again bow to anyone. The Alien Council had made a mistake. They had called humanity low threat, but now they would see what that truly meant, because Earth was a force to be reckoned with, and it would never be silenced again.